Welcome back to Tap Here, the podcast that focuses on everything to do with payments, technology, and anything to do with tapping to send money. And one person that we have had, we're going to have speak to that today is Tyler Adams. He is the CEO of CertifID, which has been focusing for quite some time on preventing the fraud that you can't even really see, but happens all the time in front of you, especially with real estate transactions. So really welcome. I really appreciate you being here, Tyler. Thank you.
Yeah, Corey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, not at all. So for starters, let's just talk generally about CertifID. Tell us how you got involved in it, what prompted you to basically set this company up and get it going.
Yeah, for sure. So back in 2015, my co-founder, Tom Cronkright, his title company was hit with a really bad wire fraud. So they thought that they were communicating with the seller in a real estate transaction, and they were responsible for sending funds from escrow for the proceeds of the home to the seller. And it turned out that they were in fact being tricked by someone impersonating the seller.
Wow.
And so they ultimately wired $200,000 to the wrong person. And that led to a lot of investigation, a lot of trying to figure out how could this happen. Actually ended up going all the way through to like a national trial around cybercrime, found out that the Black Axe was actually involved in that particular crime itself. And throughout that process, Tom and I decided that, this was going to be a problem that was clearly going to escalate if these cyber criminals realize just how much money moves through the financial system via wire transfers through pretty unsophisticated parties in a real estate transaction, or at least unsophisticated from the sense that they're not used to making these sorts of transfers of funds. And so,
Right.
we ultimately decided that we would join each other in this journey and build a company to help protect funds moving via wire transfer.
And Protect you have, and I know you were talking about a difference of 10 years. So back in 2015, obviously technology was slightly different back then, and certainly it's sped up. There's a lot more to it now. But even just looking 10 years ago until now, what are some of the core differences that you think or that you guys see that have changed, that have sort of made the battle different?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's slightly different. It is significantly different. It's significantly different today than it was 24 months ago. And the pace of change in fraud is only continuing to accelerate. So, a couple examples. When we started this journey, we actually started the company in 2017, and in 2018, we had our first product available. And as we brought it to market, we realized pretty quickly that there was a pretty big education gap. People just didn't even know about this type of fraud. They didn't understand it. If they hadn't fallen victim to it, they just didn't think it would ever happen to them.
Right.
And so we had to do a lot of education. And if I go back and I look at any of the presentations I did or speaking engagements that we did between 2018 and honestly up until like almost 2021, we had decks that would highlight, what to look for in your emails as far as misspelled words, the use of the word kindly, things that we could pick up, we could immediately know just based off of the language in an email
Wow.
that it was potentially fraudulent. As you very quickly realize, even as I say that, that's all gone, right? People are using ChatGPT, they're using other agentic systems that are enabling them to not only replicate emails, but replicate entire websites, create LinkedIn profiles for fictitious people. We are shutting down multiple websites a week right now of people either trying to impersonate some of our customers or real estate agents trying to figure out how to deceive individuals that are involved in a transaction. And I think just to take one step back, when we think about the type of fraud that we are stopping, it's really considered business email compromise or funds transfer fraud.
Mm-hmm.
And so this isn't fraudsters like breaking into our customers' bank accounts or hacking into their systems. It's literally, it starts with phishing typically, and somebody gets phished in a transaction so that there's some knowledge of the transfer of details and funds. But ultimately, it's deception. It is fraudsters impersonating someone in the transaction to convince somebody else to send money to them. And so it's all about scams, trickery, anything like that. But the tools that they have at their disposal to make you believe that they are who they're trying to deceive is just like unfathomable how good they've gotten at this because of technology.
Sure. I mean, I still remember being kind of impressed when, the king of Nigeria reached out to me and asked me, like, hey, I want to help. Maybe you can help out by sort of moving some money from A to B for me and I'll give you a cut. Obviously,
Yeah.
we're way past that. And I'd like to think I'm smart enough to avoid that kind of stuff, as are most people. But your point about agentic AI, and obviously, just the ability for machines to really replicate the human experience. Obviously, this just sounds like an all out battle that's actually only increased in the last, as you point out, 6 to 12 months. So, have you seen an uptick in the amount of fraud, the dollar figure of fraud, anything like that?
Yeah, so I mean, last year was 16.6 billion that was reported from cyber crimes,
Billion.
into the FBI, and so of that 16.6 billion, about 2.7 billion was attributed strictly to business email compromise fraud, the type of fraud that I just mentioned. However, there's like it's weird how FBI classifies it. There's a thing called the IC3 report that comes out every year. And there's a whole nother segment on like romance scams. And you say, I hope I'm smart enough to not fall victim to those frauds. Nobody's too smart to not fall victim to a fraud anymore. Like what we have seen, it is not preying on how smart you are. It's preying on emotions, on stress, on circumstances at which these guys have gotten so good that I'm telling you, anybody can fall victim to one of these scams. But the 16.6 billion last year was a 33% increase from the prior year in that type of
Wow.
fraud. There's been reports this year that like cybercrime is essentially one of the biggest risks to the transfer of wealth in the United States. So when we think about all of the baby boomers that are about to either die or hand over their life savings, as part of kind of life planning, that is one of the most heavily targeted segments right now. And we believe at a very large level in like the cybercrime community that syndicates, like nation actors across China, Russia, North Korea are actually like targeting this segment, targeting America to try and deceive and get those funds as part of that transfer of wealth. So we are definitely in the bullseye right now. And if you're moving large sums of money, there's a lot of people that would love to trick you into sending it to the wrong place.
Well, I might be misquoting, but I believe this is something you said somewhat recently, which is that we fight the kind of crime that doesn't leave fingerprints. So we build systems instead of chasing ghosts. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, I might have said that one
All right.
one day.
Well, but the point is, I mean, and you're talking about not just people who might be vulnerable, or as you point out, it's not even about gullibility. It's more about really just kind of putting yourself in the position of making a large transaction. And then, so I guess my question is, in terms of fighting these ghosts, what has changed, or what have you guys sort of tried to implement, both from a technology and from a personal experience with the ongoing battle? Like, how has that changed in terms of how certified looks to find the ghosts that you can't see?
Yeah. So, look, it's we effectively tell our customers there's three main things that you have to have, and that fraud and security, to protect against fraud, is really about having a layered approach. There isn't any individual tactic that is going to be a silver bullet to keep you safe. So our three main categories are people, process, and technology. And for a really long time, businesses used to just rely upon their people. And as long as they had good people, they thought that they could keep that business safe. Then it was like, oh, as your business gets bigger, they have to have good people. And as long as the process is really good in terms of what they're doing and what they're checking, they can then keep the business safe. And then more recently, people have started to adapt technology. Now it's like every one of those has to be like very, very dialed in. And a thing that I like to say is that, for a long time, at least in the industries that we service, people would always say, trust but verify. And I think in 2025, that has completely flipped. Like you have to verify in order to trust. And that goes for anything that you are doing in communicating with another individual or a business. And so when we support customers and businesses across the country, we will really be obviously their technology layer that's going to help them to identify if they're communicating with anybody who might be impersonating someone else. It's going to monitor their devices and make sure that no one is suffering some sort of an attack. We're going to verify bank account information. We're going to verify the authenticity of changes of bank account information. We're going to look and make sure that money is moving effectively between the accounts that you think it's supposed to be moving between. So there is a ton that can be done on the technology side. However, you still have to have really good training around the people who are even operating the technology, because a lot of these business email compromise types of scams, if somebody picks up the phone at your business and somebody really convincing on the other end of that phone line convinces you not to use the technology or not to use the process that you have in place, that is going to make you vulnerable. And so we always tell our customers, we're like, you have to come up with a way to create what we call a culture of curiosity. Like anybody in the business at any given time, if there is something that feels off, they need to be encouraged to raise their hand. They need to be encouraged to slow down a transaction. Even if that invoice is due today to send, you as a business owner should be rewarding the person for not paying that invoice today because they thought that there might be something wrong, than them being so scared of paying an invoice late that they send $200,000 to the wrong place. And then later on, you get mad at them. Well, were they following the process that you put in place, or were they, did they have that culture of curiosity? Was there a safe space to be able to slow things down when something felt fishy? And then the process piece of it, I think the process is really important. And again, technology can help enable a process. Good people can help create great process. They all need to sort of flow together. But process, and the reason why process is so important is because when you follow the same process every single time for whatever it might be, if you are verifying somebody's identity, if you are, needing to pay out that invoice that I talked about, like what are the 3 or 4 or 5 steps you do every single time for whether it's an invoice to a vendor you've worked with before or a new invoice for a new vendor, it should have the exact same process, because what that helps you and what that helps enable is you identifying or recognizing an anomaly. And when you don't have a consistent process and consistent pattern recognition, if every transaction feels different, if every interaction with the way you treat somebody feels different, then you're never going to tell easily which one is good and which one is bad. And so that is pretty foundational. And then, like I mentioned, the technology components, you do not have a chance at detecting or fighting against fraud in today's landscape if you are not also using really good technology to harden your own networks, to verify people's identity, to be able to verify people's bank account information, depending, of course, on the type of business that you're in. And, Certified is a great one, but there's a lot of other technology that's out there that can help you for a lot of those things as well.
Yeah, cool. One thing that was all fascinating, and I have a million questions, but one that's sort of sticking right now is, you mentioned speed and the point of slowing down. And this is in an era where whether it's real estate transactions or moving money from A to B by wire or paying for an invoice or funding something, everybody wants it to be instantaneous. I mean, the whole point, I mean, we talk about rails and just the whole system, right? There's actually an article in Fortune today that talked a little bit about this. So how do you try to find that balance? And that was one question. And the other is, do you have an example of somebody, who is a client or a customer, don't have to name names, but just somebody like an example where perhaps they want the speed, but they also want the protection?
Yeah, everybody wants that, right? Like we live in a day and age where everybody needs instant gratification for everything. And that is something that fraudsters take advantage of. And so again, it comes back to like trying to educate. It puts a lot of pressure on us as a technology provider and everybody out there that like you have to be able to make instant decisions to say this is good, this is bad. How quickly can you support a customer to not get in the way or be, a point of quote unquote friction. But I think one of the things that I always do and try to articulate is that like there is a healthy amount of friction. There is good friction. What would be the easiest way to get in and out of your house every day with the lowest amount of friction? Take all the doors off your house. Like that would be the fastest way to get in and out, wouldn't it? But we don't do that, right? People have front doors. They have locks on their doors. They have things that keep them safe, that make them feel good when they're in their home. And I think, in a digital transaction, we forget about that sometimes. We're like, well, why do I have to do this one more click? Or why am I being asked this information? Well, it's like having a lock on the front door, and those locks are there for a reason, and they are going to help protect you. And so it is definitely because of the instantaneous nature of the fact that, Chat GPT can all of a sudden write your entire, thesis for you in 5 seconds. People expect that they can do the same from an identity verification perspective or a bank account authentication perspective. And sometimes it takes an extra second. You asked about a customer. I mean, I'll tell you, like one of the things that we pride ourselves on in what we deliver is that there is a lot of different types of like fraud data available. And there's a lot of companies out there that will help you by giving you a risk score. And a lot of really big businesses and a lot of folks who want to like build their own models will buy data from different places, and it'll say, this is a 67% risky person, or a yellow light in the system. And it's like, okay, well, what do I do with that? Well, really technical products and companies will go layer on a bunch of other data and they'll come up with an actual risk score. Well, what we have done is we've built a system that every time we return back an answer to our customers, it's either green, move forward, it's fully insured, and we apply insurance to the transactions that we do, or this is a risky transaction, do not move forward. There is no like in between for the two. The only in between that we'll sometimes deliver to somebody is to say, we need a little bit more time. And that time is going to be to give us the ability to decide, is it green or is it red? And we actually run it through additional layers of analysis. We have a whole data team. We have a whole trust and safety team, and they will take, again, sometimes an hour to do some extra checks before we make that decision. Well, we had a customer one time that was what we returned. Like, hey, this is still in analysis. We're going to get back to you. And they went and they moved the money. Like, oh, that was too long for us to wait. We don't want to wait for that. So we moved the money, and we literally call them an hour later and we're like, hey, just wanted to let you know, this just moved to high risk. Don't send funds. And they called us and they were like, we already sent the money. What do we do? And in that scenario, fortunately, we have a fraud recovery services team, and we have the ability to go and help try to get funds back. And we were fortunate enough to get those funds back for the customer.
Oh, wow.
But it's like, what more can we do for you, right? Like we've gotten you to the point where like, we're going to give you an answer. Sometimes we just need a little bit more time, and people still will choose to make the decision that, they can't wait. They have to go now.
I mean, especially you're talking about title transfer, again, large purchases, real estate. People are excited. It's like they finally, closed on the house, and it's like, I got to send the money, and they just want it done, right? So, on the one hand, I wanted this all to go fast. On the other hand, of course, nobody wants to be in the position like what you just described, One thing I would love to kind of touch on a little bit is, and I know you mentioned a bit about sort of relationships with the FBI and some of the ability that you have to kind of delve deeper into the system. Maybe talk a little bit about how you help retrieve, or at least potentially retrieve funds when they disappear.
Yeah. So we have a strategic partnership actually with the United States Secret Service. They're a phenomenal partner. If you go back and you look at the history of the Secret Service, a lot of people just associate the Secret Service with the detail that they provide to the president. But actually, the Secret Service started as a department to help protect the monetary system of the United States. And some of the things that they did in their very early founding was all around like counterfeiting of money and trying to figure out how to stop counterfeiting in the US. And so when we partner with the Secret Service, it is mostly for funds recovery. And what that means is that if you have fallen victim to a fraud in the United States, meaning you've sent money and you've sent money to the wrong place, there's only a couple of places where you can go to get help. One, and I would strongly encourage everybody to do this if it happens to you, you go to the FBI's website, the IC3, and you file a report that says that you have fallen victim to that type of fraud. You will be put in a queue, and they will try to get to you as fast as possible. Unfortunately, there are so many reports of these types of fraud right now. I think last year they said there was one every 16 seconds.
Oh, wow.
That there is just not enough resourcing for them to get to every single one. And so they try to prioritize based on, how recent the fraud took place. If you just realize it, but it was 7 months ago, they know that it's going to be a lot harder to get the money back, depending on what you're able to give them, all of that. So we have partnered with the United States Secret Service. They also have a department that helps to try to get these funds back. And we've been really fortunate in the sense that because our dollars are such high volume dollars, and because we typically get notified in a really tight window because of what you said, people are normally sending money, getting defrauded, and then on like a Wednesday, and then they're going into their home closing on Friday, thinking that they're about to get the keys to their house, only to find out at the closing table that all of their life savings are gone. But that window and that amount of money has enabled us to have a really good partnership with the United States Secret Service, where they've been super successful in helping our customers. Our customers in this scenario, these are not mostly our software customers. These are customers coming into our hotline.
Sure.
To help them get those funds back as quickly as possible. And what's interesting is that we've talked about how important and how much that the technology innovation landscape has enabled fraudsters to accelerate. It's also enabled a lot of fraud detection companies like CertifID to accelerate. However, one thing that hasn't accelerated is the way in which funds get moved. And so if you've read or know anything about like real-time payments, or had anybody on the show before that talks about real-time payments, or like FedNow, that was one of the big we went from ACH and wire, and now they're going to try to have real-time payments available across all the different networks. Well, that's really great. It's super exciting to have an instant payment rail. Guess who also loves that? The fraudsters, because the benefit that we actually have with wires is that there's a little bit of time sometimes between when they move and they land and then they can move again. That time actually enables there to ever be a mistake where we can go and help somebody get their funds back. If real-time payments comes and fraud happens with real-time payments, fraudsters are going to be able to like move the money so fast and have it offshore and into crypto and into all different accounts that people aren't going to be able to get back. It's going to be really, really hard when it comes to recovery. So, I too see the benefits in instant payments, and there's all sorts of benefits across, global financial systems, but there's also a lot of risk involved as well.
Yeah, and now you're really making me think twice about sort of appreciating sometimes that amount of time. Not that I'm sending huge transactions, every day or anything, but just the idea that there's a bit of a buffer there. It's not something a lot of people talk about right now. So that's fascinating. So in terms of like who actually, like what type of individual? So let's say, someone's watching this and they're like, oh, geez, I'm about to sell my house. So what do I do? How do I make sure that certified is part of the transaction? How does that work?
Yeah. So, when it comes to our software and you're selling a house, you want to make sure that you're working with a title company that utilizes certified. So that's really important. And it can be a little tricky because there's some states that, depending on the buyer or seller gets to pick title, it's not always in your control.
Right.
But you should ask and you should say, hey, what's going to happen if your funds, when you go to send me the proceeds of the home, say I'm the seller, what's going to happen if you get tricked? Are you properly insured to make sure that I am going to get my money no matter what? Because that's the other thing, is that because this type of fraud has gotten so bad, the insurance companies have pulled back pretty considerably in terms of the types of insurance that they'll offer for business email compromise or funds transfer fraud. So you definitely want to ask that of the people that are involved. But I would just make it known early on to your real estate agent or to the title company that you would expect that they would be utilizing certified in the transaction so that everybody stays safe.
Got it. Okay. No, that's good to know. And then in terms of we touched on this a little bit in terms of just even mentioning invoicing and other things, just looking at some of the other industries. And I'm sort of looking, I'm just giving you the bit, leading you down that 5 year out kind of outlook. But, just what you mentioned stable coins, you mentioned crypto. Where are some of the areas that you see as being, I don't know, I don't want to say up and coming because that's not the right way to say it when you're talking about fraud, but some of the more, I would say, prominent areas where certified, it can help really kind of prevent more of these transactions. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we started in real estate, one, because my co-founder owned a title company, but secondarily, because real estate has been heavily targeted for this type of fraud because the transactions are so public. So think about it. Like if you look at Zillow is literally a shopping list for fraudsters. All they can see across there are tons of homes, the price. So they literally know, within some realm or reason, how much money might get transferred between parties. It has a real estate agent attached to it with their contact details. You can look up the seller and their details really easily with public records. Like they literally have all the data that they need to go and just target those people. And then even worse, when a house goes under contract, it literally says that on the website. So now they know like parties are about to come to a table within the next 30 to 60 days to move money. We are giving a bullseye target away to fraudsters with real estate transactions. Yeah. And so that industry will continue to have a ton of pressure on it as a result of the public nature of the transactions. Now, when we think about, other industries and where we are seeing the impacts of fraud, well, one of the things that's really interesting is the fact that because we have that fraud recovery services, we actually get a lot of inbound requests from businesses of all shapes and sizes that have been impacted by business email compromise. And it's really interesting. If you were just to look at our data over the last 12 months, kind of goes in waves of the types of businesses that we have seen come through. And we really attribute this just to the opportunistic nature of fraudsters. They get one win and they think, well, let's try to replicate that. Mm-hmm. At the beginning of this year, I think we supported like 9 churches who had gotten tricked into sending funds to the wrong place. I look at it as some fraud syndicate or someone got into a church system, figured out like, wait, hold on. There's these massive churches throughout the United States. Sometimes they're moving big money for different things. We helped one that had just replaced their whole roof and they thought they were communicating with the roofing company. And in fact, they were communicating with fraudsters. And it was like, $200,000 worth of roofing needs for the actual construction of that building.
Crazy. And so, yeah.
Crazy stuff. And so what we've found though is that, a lot of those types of transactions are less public. And so now what we're seeing is that the fraudsters using AI tools are just sending out an absolute barrage of phishing attacks and just trying to get into as many email inboxes as possible on both sides, the business side as well as like the contractor side. Another wave that we saw was like leasing of large construction equipment. And there's really large dollars attributed with those types of transactions as well. And so we just believe that like it's not necessarily one segment versus the other. It's wherever the money is and the money is moving, they're going to find it and they're going to go after it. And so we're really trying to position ourselves as we continue to scale outside of real estate, just into different flow of funds, into different places where we know the distribution is going to be pretty significant. And we know that we can support any type of business when they're thinking about, is it safe to send money to this other business or to this other individual? That's really what the core of our technology is. And it's just sort of, able to service the real estate industry pretty specifically today because how much funds are being protected and distributed on a daily basis.
Yeah, and as you pointed out, these transactions that are literally like, online posted right there in front of, it never occurred to me. I mean, everybody looks at Zillow because they want to see, sort of the eye candy and, and the eye-popping,
Yeah,
eye-watering prices. But yeah, it's actually like literally a blueprint. It's fascinating.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
I could talk all day. I could ask you a ton of questions. I don't want to keep you forever, obviously. You got things to do, frauds to catch. One thing that did come up recently for you, in a good way, is obviously you had a new partnership with a private growth equity firm, Santana Growth Partners.
Yep.
I know that they partnered with you. You raised roughly $47.5 million. Great opportunity to kind of increase bandwidth. We've talked a lot about, I think already, what it is that you might do in terms of expanding and growing, but maybe in your own words, like what are your thoughts about where you want to take the company next?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, super excited about the partnership with Santana. I think they're going to be a great member of the team and a big support system for us moving forward. I think about fundraising in this particular raise as pretty foundational in a couple of areas. The first one is just continuing to like harden our technology and defenses against fraud. As I mentioned, the fraudsters have access to all of these tools. They're making so much money committing fraud, and they're like their own VC. They just keep pumping it back into their own businesses so they can commit more fraud. And so you need to have capital to be able to continue to invest in the technology that we're going to be able to provide to our customers to stay a step ahead. And sometimes, honestly, we don't even try to stay a step ahead. It's like, how can we just stay like a half step behind? Trying to predict everything that these fraudsters are going to do is really hard. But if you're listening to the data, you're listening to what you're seeing in the market, we can make adjustments to continue to evolve our practices to keep up with what they're doing. And so really investing in the R&D around fraud detection and is trying to prevent, losses for our customers is number one. I think number two is that expansion into other verticals. So we've had a great run in real estate. Real estate will continue to be our most important customer segment, and we'll continue to deliver, innovations for our customers that are in the real estate world. But we also believe that underlying technology that we've built and the capabilities that we have to both verify and authenticate any individual or business, plus help them move funds securely and completely insured, is agnostic to every other vertical that we're sort of targeting. So we're going to put some significant investment into building out those particular verticals and the teams required in order to be successful as we support folks outside of the real estate market. And then the last one, and sort of flows through both, but it's just like continue to build a great team, for our business and for what we do. When I founded this company, I never really, at the beginning, like we knew it was going to be a big problem, or at least we had a hunch it was going to be a big problem. We never imagined COVID would happen and like how much that would accelerate the international cyber crime syndicates around this type of fraud. But it did happen. And I think I look back now and I'm just super excited about being able to lead a very mission-driven business. Our team wakes up every single day and is like excited about the fact that we're working on something that matters. We're working on something that's like helping to keep good people's money in their pocket and not end up, funding North Korea's like nuclear program, which is where a lot of cyber funds end up. And that part of it, to be able to keep bringing great people into the business, to be able to keep building a great team that's really excited about taking on this challenge, is something that having some extra funding to continue to fuel is really important for me and the folks that work here.
Awesome. We're going to have you back. I want to hear about the sort of the craziest, trace of money that you've experienced. Where was the crazy? I mean, you mentioned obviously North Korea. I'm sure you got a few stories like
Yeah.
that, huh?
Well, I mean, honestly, for us, it's like we've had instances where, because of the partnership of the United States Secret Service, we had a closing where um, we were tracking the funds, and somebody called in and said, hey, I've had a fraud and we need your help. And as we dug into it, we were actually able to see that the wire got sent to the fraudulent account. We had the fraudulent information that we were able to track down. We called the bank, Secret Service kind of back channeled through that financial institution, only to find out that like hours prior, cashier's checks had been taken out of that account. And then they were able to track down where the cashier's checks went, and actually go and help get those funds back. So just like, yeah, we've seen some crazy stuff. We've seen a lot of sad stuff. We've had
Sure.
700 calls to our fraud recovery services hotline. You can't recover them all. You're on a lot of phone calls helping people on their worst day and just telling them like, hey, we're really sorry, but those funds are gone and they're not going to come back. And unfortunately, that's the more common story. And I think that everybody gets excited about getting the funds back. We've recovered more than $100 million worth of money that had been sent to fraudulent accounts, but there's been a lot more that hasn't gotten back to those folks. And that's the part that keeps us going and keeps us wanting to build this business to get a lot bigger.
For sure, and you guys, you should get some, if you don't wear them already, you should get some capes, because obviously, certified capes, because you guys are obviously fighting the good battle. And without you, obviously, you would have a number that is significantly higher in terms of lost revenue, lost money. So there you go. Well, Tyler, I really want to thank you for joining us. It's been fascinating. Really appreciate it. And, hopefully we will get to reconnect and hear a little bit more about some of these stories in the near future.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me on, Corey. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. And now for the legalese. The information provided in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, or legal advice. Always do your own research and consult with a licensed financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Past performance is not indicative of future results, and all investments carry risk. The views expressed are those of the hosts and the guests and do not necessarily reflect those of any affiliated organizations.